don't just assume because you've done it in the IT world for this long and you've had success on your IT assets that those same solutions are going to fit into the OT environment. There are very unique challenges there.
Hey, I'm Dino Busalachi, the Chief Technology Officer and OT guy at Delta Technology.
Hi, I'm Jim, the COO and IT guy.
And I'm Craig Duckworth, President and CEO.
You're listening to the Industrial Cybersecurity Insider Show.
In each episode, we bring you the inside scoop on the world of industrial cybersecurity.
We talk about everything you don't know
that you should know. So plug in and power up. The show's about to get started.
Hi, my name is Dino Busalachi, and I'm an OT cybersecurity guy. And so today we have a special guest, and her name is Debbie Lay, and she works for one of our partners, TXOne. Welcome, Debbie.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So I guess first off, why don't we talk about your journey into the OT cybersecurity arena? I know that it's probably been long but short because OT cybersecurity is kind of a new phenomena, even though from a manufacturing perspective, you would think it had been around for decades.
Yeah, it's interesting. Started out my career almost 30 years ago now. So, wow, that's been a while. But in the networking side, so doing Ethernet, token ring, FDDI. And so even IT security there was pretty new. We had AV on the desktops, but we didn't have firewalls even deployed. So I really started out my career in cyber, really came behind a WatchGuard Technologies back in 1997 as the first appliance-based firewall. And so through the years of security, went through multiple vendors, but never did the endpoint until about 10 years ago. I went to join a startup company called Confer that got quickly bought out by Carbon Black. And so it was really around bringing to the market next-gen AV, but it was in the cloud-based scenario, so deploying agents. And so, I did that for many years, but the last 2 years, as I was talking to clients, this OT word acronym kept coming up, right? And it was like, how does your agent work in an OT environment? And I was like, well, does it run this operating system or higher? I'm doing the checklist, to deploy an agent. And they're like, yes. And I was like, well, can you open up the firewall ports to talk to our cloud backend because we are a cloud offering? And hit that checkbox. And I was like, great. And then they said, then we went to install it. And, it was not a pleasant experience.
Yeah, it never is on the plant floor. It never is because the plant floor is a challenge. Back to the IT solutions and trying to shoehorn them in, right, round peg, square hole into the OT environment has definitely got its challenges with assets that have been in the field for decades, 1, 2, 3 decades. We just actually had a project we were doing. I got a note from my team overseas on a job they're doing. They found a Windows 2003 server, right? Windows 2003. And of course, they had a virus on it. But yeah, that's the stuff that you can find on the plant floor. And most CISOs, if they found even a Windows 7 or XP machine, their first response is, we'll get that off my network.
Right.
Well, what's the challenges behind that?
Well, and what's interesting was in IT, we always had a test bed or a lab that we could test our agent on first, right? And in OT, you didn't have that. They didn't have this other test bed over here where we could try it out first. We were trying it out on production systems. And that's never a good place to be as a vendor.
No, it's very disruptive, right? And with OT people, you only get a short window to try to work things out. And if you can't, you're out because they got to get back to producing goods. There's not very many second chances on that plant floor with coming in there and being disruptive.
Very true.
So endpoint is an interesting topic, right? Because, TXOne has a unique offering around virtual patching. So why don't you give our audience an idea of what virtual patching is and why it can be relevant in the OT space?
Yeah, so virtual patching is the whole concept behind, we know that OT hasn't been able and may never get to a patching cycle like we have in IT security. It might never get there. And so even though a vendor might come out with a patch for an ICS piece of hardware out there, it doesn't mean they can patch right then and there. So the whole idea behind virtual patching is with a TXOne virtual appliance sitting in front of a single asset or multiple assets by turning on the appropriate policy that says, hey, I want to stop these vulnerabilities from being exploited. I can do that from a appliance space, and then all the downstream devices inherit that virtual patch, so to speak.
Yeah, which, from a CISO or an info security perspective, for clients that are starting to learn about systems that they just can't replace, meaning they can't get rid of the technology that's being used to run those machine centers, virtual patching to me would be like an easy button for them to push, meaning that I can't force the plant to take that unpatchable, vulnerable asset off the network, but I have a way to secure it through a virtual patching methodology and technology to get what I want as a security guy, but at the same time not being impactful to the plant. And there's a lot of people, I don't think they really understand what virtual patching is, because when I bring that up, even if I'm talking to technical people, the security people, they're like, what is that? Because they're so used to putting an agent in the environment. Is there a way to get the AV and to get other security characteristics and policies that they would normally implement at the endpoint, whereas on the plant floor, you can't do that with a PLC. It's hard to do with older Windows operating systems. You can't do that with drives and robots and motors and pumps and things of that nature, where now you can start providing a virtual patch capability, which I think is pretty neat.
Yeah, and it buys time. Even if you do have the ability to patch, maybe it's every 6 months or a year in your OT environment. But if it's a critical enough vulnerability that you want to stop, virtual patching provides you that extra time until you can get into a regular patch cycle.
Right. Even not only just a critical vulnerability, but also if it's a critical asset that's really important to your operation, meaning that I can't afford to lose this machine or these machines, because if I do, my plant is going to slow and stop, and then it's really costing me big dollars, big money. So,
That's a great point.
Yeah. So, rewinding a little bit, OT cybersecurity, generally speaking, is being a fairly new phenomenon within the security arena. I come at it from the other side, right? My background is manufacturing. My background is infrastructure around control systems. The challenge that I see is this IT-OT convergence that people talk about, right? Which is a good thing, right? We want convergence, we want alignment, we want collaboration, we want transparency. But I don't really see that practiced very well. Meaning, and so IT, sometimes we recognize, well, at least open the door for the conversation to get started, thinking we need to do better, we need to do something. But then it kind of drifts and stops, or IT can only go so far. Then the challenge becomes is how do you get the OT organization to move the other direction and start wanting to be a willing participant in providing digital safety, cybersecurity around their control system environments and working with their IT team. What has been your experience with that IT-OT relationship?
Yeah, it is still heavily siloed as we talk to customers. When I talk and I'm talking with the IT folks, I think one of the biggest ways to bridge that gap, most of the time they have executive level sponsorship. They know they need to get better, right? But they're leaving it to the IT teams to do that. And I think the first thing from an IT perspective is get with the folks and truly understand from the OT side what their world is about. It's amazing to me how many customers we go out and visit, and the IT side has never done a plant walkthrough. They've not done that. And so bridge that gap. Pick up the phone and say, hey, can you take me on a plant walkthrough? I'd like to understand what is going on here. Where are those? And let them lead the conversation. Like, just truly understand what pressure and what pain that they're under. And also, don't just assume because you've done it in the IT world for this long and you've had success on your IT assets that those same solutions are going to fit into the OT environment. There are very unique challenges there.
Right. And when we say walkthrough, that means you show up to the plant with your proper PPE, planning on spending, a few hours or a half a day or more on site with the ability to open up the panels to see what's in them, right? Not just walk through the plant and look at the IDFs and kind of take a cursory view of plant operations, but actually look under the hood to see what drives those control systems and how they're architected and how they're put in. To me, that's one of the most eye-opening activities that we witness, because that's the work we do, right? That's the world in which we live. And when I usually take IT people and meet them in the plant, one, you hope they show up with the proper PPE to even be able to get on the plant floor. Number one, that's number one. Number two is when you open up that panel, are they willing to dig in to try to solve that problem? Or are they going to go, that's not me, right? And that's okay. It is. If it's not you, then how do we solve this problem? And that's where IT needs to be able to influence that senior leadership and that OT leadership going, look, we all need help here to go and solve this problem. We need with the proper vendors that are whose technologies are OT specific from a cybersecurity perspective, because my IT tools are not necessarily the best, and the skills required to do this work are not in my team's background. And if you can get them to start thinking and saying that, then I think it moves the needle a little bit further along. That's my big takeaway when it comes to when you say walkthrough.
Yeah, and I appreciate that because I've learned so much working with you as a valued partner of TXOne. I come at it from the product perspective. How do I fix these? Hey, you just put this network piece of equipment right here, and then if they have that eye-opening experience where you go under the hood and you're like, where do you put it? Right? Does it have power? And
yeah, real estate.
Yeah, I mean, to have the right partners that have the right expertise to leverage all that skill, because not one person, not one company has all the answers. I mean, there's not a silver bullet. We have to work together at the team and leverage different expertise. Maybe I have the product expertise on the networking side with virtual patching. You all have the expertise and, implementation, going through those walk. So it's just very important that we all work together.
Because we have to work side by side by the plant ownership in order. When can you take that machine down? Can you even open that panel during operation? Because some panels, are very dangerous, right? There's a lot of power in there, and so you may not be able to get into that panel until there's a shutdown, right? Lockout, tag out, de-energize, so you can get in there and actually work around that in a safe manner. That's part of it, and that also changes the dynamics of how you do these implementations, because now you're looking for downtime windows, planned downtime windows to go and do some of this work. And that means you got to be close to the plant to be able to know what are their operational schedules like. When do they take down the plant for general maintenance activities that they've got to do? Maybe it only happens once or twice a year. And so, or maybe you have to work around their production schedules and you have to be able to map that out in order to be able to do some of this work. And that's really, really important. That's for sure. That being said, what are some of the other technologies that TXOne brings to the market? We have to talk about virtual patching. What else does TXOne have in their portfolio that would be beneficial to the plant floor organizations from a security perspective?
Yeah, I think that once you get past the network side of things with virtual patching, microsegmentation, those types of technology, deep packet inspection, and being able to set up which machines can talk to which ones really come in now. So that kind of deals with the external threat coming through from that IT to OT convergence, and we know number one is ransomware, right? And so the tools that we put in place for the network perspective really help address that. But now you got to worry about the insider threat. What comes in behind the network? Who has physical access to that OT asset? So when you talk about protecting that asset, we want to make sure that it's free of malware. Maybe that it stays within, nobody's using the USB ports on that machine itself. That we want application lockdown so that I don't care if it's good or bad. I don't want to change. This machine's been doing the same thing for 10 years, and I don't want it to change. So for those types of use cases, we have an agent-based solution that we call Stellar that is, again, gets installed and it provides all those features to make sure that we're locking down that asset, protecting that asset from change, protecting it from malware, making sure that the USB device, only certified or authorized USB devices can be used on that system itself. It doesn't require cloud dependency. That's very key. So all the updates and changes happen when you say updates and changes can happen.
And we'll circle back on that one because we'll talk about the events from last week with the impact of Crowdstrike and what we've learned and what we've witnessed with some of our clients on the impact of that due to a cloud-based technology that's made its way to the plant floor. And the disruption to when that event happened, people would say, well, that was an IT event. It wasn't an attack. It was just a human error, right? It was a screw up. Plants went down because those plants rely on Windows operating systems to be able to run their SCADA applications or the DCS applications in order to run that plant floor. And so a lot of manufacturers try to shy away and do not want cloud-based solutions because of those types of back doors that can happen through the cloud that can be very impactful to them. And you know that IT jammed Crowdstrike down on that plant floor. They did. And it's difficult in standalone machines running older Windows operating systems, trying to put Crowdstrike out there. It's too heavy. The overhead is too much. Those machines won't even run. If you're running in a virtual environment and you're running your HMIs on virtual machines, you have a better chance of using those type of agents. You still got the heavy lift, but now you have this vulnerability from an external activity being disruptive to your plant floor. And plant people, as they learn this, what do you think they're going to do? They're not going to wait for the next one to happen. What they're going to say is, get that stuff out of here. I don't want it on these machines because look what happened. And I was down for 3 days.
And let me just say, from the IT perspective, in selling a cloud-based agent solution for 6 years, there definitely value in having that in the cloud, from identifying 0 days and behavioral and not having to maintain. But it doesn't mean that was the right thing to do in an OT environment. To allow any change to happen in your OT environment from a security perspective that you don't know about is not good.
And there comes the rub. I was having a little bit of a debate with an OT IDS partner here just recently, and you could tell his entire focus, his entire background, where he came from was from the IT side, right? He had very little really recognition and understanding of the value that tools that his company sells, who are they really for? Meaning that you have an OT IDS system, for example, 80+%, 85% of the data produced by that system is for the OT teams. And I'll find companies where the IT security team doesn't even let the OT teams have access to an OT IDS. Now, how crazy is that? That the people that really need that data don't have access to it because some group within IT, from a security perspective, is doing the cloak and dagger thing. And at the same time, their cloak and dagger mentality is just what shut you down last week based on the Crowdstrike stuff. So we have this issue between, I know better than you on what it takes to provide security for that environment. I hear it and I witness it a lot. To your point, you think about your background, where you came from on the IT side, and you've moved into that OT cybersecurity arena as some of these other IT security professionals have crossed over into that OT environment. But I would argue, well, how many of them actually worked on the plant floor? Literally worked on the plant floor and done work to put in a network, to put in security, to work on a control system startup, put a new packaging line in my company. Are you part of the startup? Did you live in the field for 6 months while they were putting this $25 million piece of equipment in motion? And if the answer is no, then you can't sit in an ivory tower somewhere and expect to dictate what a cybersecurity strategy should look like on the plant floor.
You better be a sponge and take it all in.
Well, what I would say is you need new friends, right? Because if you think you're the smartest cat in the room, maybe you are in your circles, you need new friends, right? Is what I would say. And that's where the OT ecosystem of suppliers, automation technology vendors, the system integrators who use these technologies to build these control systems and run these machine centers, they have to get in the game. Right. I mean, that's been my position since starting up the prior company, that the only way this is really going to work is to get OT partners, providers into this space and start asking better questions, bringing better tools, working with partners who specialize in this space, and then sit out and bring IT into it. Because what I witnessed is the closer IT gets to this, the more they tend to back away from it, because at the end of the day, they don't want to be responsible for production, real production.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it is educating some of our partners, especially those that are moving into the space, which is, to me, is the best part of the job. But that's just my view on it, right? And there may be some CISOs and IT executives out there and infrastructure directors that probably rolling their eyes listening to me talk. But at the end of the day, walk a day in my shoes in a plant. And then let's have a conversation.
Yeah, we've said that multiple times, collaboration, right? It's a team sport. You got to get in the game, to your point. And by being a sponge, I just meant be a listener, active listen to what the OT side is struggling with and what their challenges are, and be able to adapt and change to that. Yeah.
So from an industry perspective, generally speaking, what are you seeing, with all the different plays in this space, maybe specific verticals, maybe specific countries? From an OT cybersecurity perspective, who's really moving the needle? Is it the Fortune 100s because they got the money? Is it, I know the smaller companies are going to struggle with this, right? Because the field is light in experience around OT cybersecurity. I mean, you got to witness that in your business alone. It's like, who's the IT cybersecurity person that I need to be working with in your organization?
Yeah, I wish I knew who was really buying it, because are really at the beginning of their journeys and serious about taking this journey into cyber on the OT side. But it's been I think it's like somebody who does commercial laundry. The opportunity and what it would cost them if they got a ransomware attack in their environment based off of industry, standards of time to remediate, to fix that, assuming they don't pay the ransom. And they did this whole cost analysis. And they're saying, look, I'm not going to be a target of a nation state attack. Probably not. Somebody's not going to target me to bring down my laundry facility. But the chance of ransomware, probably pretty high. So we need to spend the money, because here's the amount of loss that we're going to suffer if we don't do anything about it. Right. So it is the big companies. I see that, publicly traded companies, because they got to file with the SEC, and we see when they have to announce and let somebody know that they had a ransomware attack, how that impacts their bottom dollar. So we've seen that. But, it's across the board.
Yeah, really, I want to touch on the SEC thing too, because that's an important one. Because I read an article last month where the government, in my view, gets to pick and choose losers, meaning that the 4 days that you're required to respond to a material breach, depending on who you are, will decide on whether you have to do that or not. For whatever reason, whether it's the government wanting to try to learn who did it, how they do it, what's going on, because they want to do their own research before you tell the world, the investors, this, or the client going, if my investors find out this is going on, I'm going to lose hundreds of millions of dollars potentially because of this ruling that says you got 4 days to tell your investors what happened. And so again, depending on who you are, again, you got to be publicly traded, but you can basically get a waiver. That's what I've seen. So where's the teeth, right?
Yeah, that is unfortunate.
Yeah, but again, it's the reality of it. The time has come, though, for folks to start looking at it differently, and they have to push through the blockade that sometimes I think IT organizations put up in trying to figure that out, because they would say, well, there's not OT specific attacks. Well, Crowdstrike wasn't an attack at all, but still plants went down. So then you have to look at what you did to cause that problem. And at the same time, you think about going back to the 2017, 2016 timeframe, WannaCry, right? Ryuk. Those weren't targeted attacks either. That was just taking an exploit that everybody had, and it just splashed and went out laterally throughout the universe here and caused great strife for organizations, right? And again, was that an OT attack? No. But again, you have these technologies on your plant floor running your control systems that are vulnerable to IT-specific attacks, if that's what you want to call them.
Yeah, great point.
All right. Well, more to come. We'll have other episodes. Debbie, thanks so much for joining us today.
You bet. Enjoyed being here.
Join us for future podcasts.
Yeah, great conversation. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Industrial Cybersecurity Insider Podcast. To stay up to date with our latest episodes, be sure to click the follow or subscribe button now. And if you found this podcast helpful or have a topic you'd like us to cover, please leave us a review or let us know. If you're interested in learning more about Velta technology and how you can get safer sooner, visit veltatech.com. That's BELTA tech.com. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.